Hello everybody and welcome to Dojo 101, how to teach classes and get paid for doing so. My name is Nader Ormand and I just wanted to put this together for the people who may be interested in teaching classes but aren't exactly sure what that process entails. So let's get right into it. So the process is not super complicated. Essentially, you'll want to select a topic that you want to teach about. You'll do perhaps a little prep work, gather any reference materials you might need. You'll select a time for your class and send out a pre-ping for that time so that people know when it's happening. Then you'll ping again and run the class. Then there's a few things to do towards the end of your class. And you'll edit any video recordings you made and submit that video and a payment form, and then you're all done. Let's dig into each step just a little further. So in selecting a topic, it should be something that you're knowledgeable about, but you do not need to be an expert. You don't need to know every single little detail. The basics classes are always needed. Fleet 101, Intro to Nullsec, eWar, Logi, etc., etc. We want our newbies to thrive in our space, and we want them to be able to engage with our fleets as much as possible, and above all, have fun. And when you're picking your topic, you should consider the scope and depth. You should limit your class to a single topic or a minimum number of closely related topics. You want your class to be cohesive overall. You don't want it to be overly broad or lengthy. We want to be respectful of people's time. 30 minutes is a good length, although sometimes it is not possible to get everything out in 30 minutes, but we don't want to go too much over an hour wherever possible. The depth should be appropriate to the level of class that you're teaching. In a basics class, you don't really need to drill down into every nitty-gritty detail of game mechanics, whereas if you're teaching an advanced class, digging down that far may very well be appropriate to the class. Some of you may already have an idea of what class you would like to teach, and if you do, that's fantastic, but for those of you who may not be sure what you should teach, you can find inspiration in some different places. If you check the Dojo instructors channel in Slack, people come there to request specific classes. You can also pay attention to some of the various channels we have around the game for commonly asked questions. You can find these in Dojo on Slack or the in-game Dojo channel, as well as questions that come up a lot during Strat-Op and Fun Fleets, during Alliance chats and Q&A sessions, as well as the questions that come up all the time in Standing Fleet. You can consider all these questions and see if there's something there that you can formulate into a class to help newbies understand better. You can also think back to your early days when you were first starting out. What aspects of the game gave you problems? What confused you, and what could have been explained to you to make your experience that much better? You can also ask other instructors and members of the dojo what classes they feel are needed at the time. And when you're coming up with your topic, if possible, if it's something that lends itself to a practical exercise, that is always preferred wherever possible. People like to undock, people like to engage rather than just listening. Lecturing is important, but if you can, if it's something you can do, try to get people undocked and out in space practicing stuff. Now that you've got your topic selected, you want to perhaps do a little bit of prep work. I'll say off the bat that it is totally up to you how much effort you want to put into this step. If you're very comfortable with your material, you can just go off the top of your head. I personally like to do just a little bit of preparing ahead of time so that I'm set up and ready to go. And some of the ways that you can go about this, you can formulate an outline, planning out what you want to cover, including the major topics, any supporting information about those topics, as well as the order that you present those topics. Perhaps, one idea builds on top of another. It's a good idea to have those in a good order. You also may want to consider if there's specific times in the class that you would like to field questions. When you're doing this, if you prefer to write things down, there's a couple ways you can do it. I personally prefer to do bullet points, just short little tidbits that call to mind something that I know that I want to say, but are not overly long. They're just little reminders so that I don't forget things. Whereas other people prefer to write full scripts that they read from more or less word for word. Totally up to your preference if you're writing things down. And some of these classes will have ready-made outlines either by Brave members in our Dojo Instructors channel or our wiki, as well as the Eve Uni wiki. They have tons and tons of classes over there that you can pick and choose from, little bits and pieces as you need. You may want to gather some reference materials, and what I mean by reference materials is anything that you might be directing your students to refer to, be that wiki pages, in-game items, links, UI pointers, other information. Any of the plethora of external websites and resources that have popped up around this game, as well as any elements of stream and video. Some topics are almost impossible to describe solely with words, so you may need to show people what you're talking about on your screen. In that case, you may want to set up something like OBS and Twitch in order to get your video across, but do test your setup ahead of time and make sure that you censor any sensitive information from the screen. You can save links to the notepad in-game under the utilities in the Neocom. It's very handy to dump all your links into a note on there so that you have them ready to roll for your class. You can also include links in the message of the day for your fleet where appropriate, so that you can just have students refer to the message of the day as you're teaching. If you're going to be using CC, that is Singularity, the test server for perhaps more advanced classes, give people plenty of notice so that they can get their Singularity account set up and get everything ready for your class. If you need ships from the dojo to hand out, just reach out to a member of the dojo and we'll get that sorted out for you. Just give us a little bit of notice so that we can get it set up. I want to stress that you shouldn't overburden yourself with planning. You don't have to overthink it. At the end of the day, we want you to get out there and teach, and we want you to enjoy teaching. So grab a rough outline and just go for it. All right, now that you've done your prep work, it's time to pick a time. So the rule here is that there really isn't a rule. There is no set schedule, and you run classes when you're able to run classes, and that is the bottom line. But if you have somewhat of a flexible schedule, some considerations you can make are some of the busier times when you might get more students. Those typically happen in the EU time zone and US time zone, generally during the evening hours and on weekends for those respective time zones. And I've noticed that an underserved time zone that we have pilots in is the Australia time zone. Unfortunately, they're kind of on the other side of the world, so they don't see a lot of classes offered in their prime time. If somebody was able to do AU time zone classes, that would be fantastic. And I would caution you to take classes one at a time. We don't want you to burn yourself out. We want you to enjoy teaching, and we want you to continue to enjoy teaching in the long term. So don't promise a whole series of classes and end up burning yourself out trying to meet that promise that you made. Just take it one ping at a time. And so now that you've selected your time, send out a pre-ping to let people know when it's happening. So you can do this using the ping board. The address is on screen, but the easiest way to get there is to go on Slack, open your own DMs, and type +ping, and Slackbot will give you a handy link. You want to log in with the character that you are going to be teaching the class with. And you want to check the calendar as well as other ping channels for perhaps conflicting stratops. You'll look for things like structure timers or pre-pinged CTAs or stratops. Those will take priority, so you should not schedule your fleet during one of those. You can find the calendar on the ping board at the top left as notated on the screen. Click there and you'll be able to see everything that's been planned so far. Want to select the correct channel on the ping board. This is just Ping's Dojo as notated here. It'll be on the left portion of the screen. And you want to make sure that you send your pre-ping out at least 4 hours ahead of time. Ideally, you'll send it out a day or more in advance. Just give people plenty of notice that it's going to happen. And while you're sending your pre-ping, you can use the options and placeholders just as a convenience to yourself. This will automatically add your event to the calendar so everybody can see it. It will automatically generate a Nakamura time link so that everybody knows in their own local time when the class is happening. This really prevents confusion about what time things are going on. So when you're filling this out, you'll check this box to get all the options to appear. You'll type your class title, and you'll want to select Eve time. and fill in the time that you want to run things. Down here in the blue box, this will auto-populate based on what you fill in up here. And this time given here is actually your local time, or what the ping board thinks is your local time, assuming you're not using a VPN or something like that. And if you're not sure what eve time you want to run it, but you do know your local time that you want to run it, you can play around with the time here, and this will change to your local time until you get it set up the way that you want it. This is just an example of a fully filled out pre-ping, ready to hit send. So I filled out all the information up here, and these placeholders, the double curly brackets, will automatically populate the information from this blue box. So it will automatically put my name in the instructor field, it will put the class name in the title field, and it will put the Nakamura time link in the time field. All the rest of this will be blank, and you'll have to fill it out, other than the mumble channel. That is by default the Dojo mumble channel. If you need to use a different channel, you'll have to edit this. You want to include any specific ship types you need your students to have. You want to fill out the location, typically an FTACN, but could be different depending on what you're doing. You want to give a rough duration for your class. And you'll want to state yes or no whether you're going to be handing out ships. And then in the Y field, give a description of your class, what you're going to cover, and any prerequisite skill levels or any of that kind of stuff that you want to see your students have. And then once you've got all this filled out, you're ready to hit send ping. Do note that there is no confirmation. It will just send the ping, so be sure that you're ready to go before you click that button. Now that you've sent out your pre-ping and you've waited and the time is approaching, it's time to ping again and then run your class. So about 15 minutes or so before your scheduled time, go ahead and send another ping. You can do this directly in Slack, the Ping's Dojo channel. Use @channel to make sure that you get everybody's attention. You can just copy the pre-ping that you sent before, but adjust your time so that it says, instead of a Nakamura link, it says something like in 15 minutes. You'll set up your fleet, create your advert with the appropriate standings. This should include Corp, Alliance, and anybody with excellent standings, so +10. You want to set your fleet name as the class name, for instance, Dojo 101. And you want to create a message of the day with any relevant info and links there. You want to join the appropriate comms channel, and by default this is the Dojo channel in Mumble. But if you're using Discord or some other comms, you'll join in there. And if StratOps happen to come up while you're forming, you will need to delay your class, as StratOps take priority. This does not apply to fun fleets, only StratOps, CTAs, etc. During class, just rely on your prepared materials, any outlines you may have written, any reference materials you may have gathered. Allow plenty of time for questions. Totally up to your discretion whether you want to have students ask questions as they come up, or if you want them to ask at specific times, or if you want them to hold their questions until the end. That is totally up to you. Don't rush through. I know I said that we want to be respectful of people's time. We don't want to drag the class out, but that doesn't mean that we need to rush. You want to make sure that you speak slowly and clearly. There may be some language barriers involved. You just want to make sure that you are being clearly understood by everybody. Be prepared for questions that you may not know the answer to. What I mean by this is somebody throws you a curveball. Make sure that you're ready to either look that information up for them quickly and get them an answer, or direct them to somewhere where they might be able to get an answer. For instance, a specific Slack channel, or the Dojo Slack channel, or a wiki article, something like that. And if you're feeling nervous, as I know I did the first time that I taught a class, just remember that you're among friends, that everybody in your class wants to be in your class. There is no pressure here. Just try to relax and have a little fun with it. At the end of your class, after you've gone through all your topics and allowed questions and answers to be done, you can conclude. So thanks, students, for coming. It's always great to see students coming out and learning things. So thank them for their time, and give them a link to the Dojo feedback form. You can find this link on the Dojo instructor guide page, and this is a good link to include in your message of the day. Just throw it in there, say, hey, feedback is appreciated. If you could just click this link. If you need handouts returned to you, if there's ships that you need to get back, make sure that you're asking students before you dismiss them, before you fully conclude the class. Sometimes people forget that they were handed out. Just give them a reminder, say, hey, if you took a handout ship, make sure that you trade it back to me before you leave, please. If you recorded your class, you will want to edit it down so that it's ready to be posted on the Dojo YouTube channel. You can find logos and video intros on the propaganda logos page on our wiki. These are nice and handy to use for all your video editing needs. And then you want to upload your video to Google Drive and make sure that it can be accessed with a URL that you can share with the Dojo. Then you'll fill out your payment form and include that Google Drive link if you have a video, and go ahead and submit the form and you will be paid. The payment form can be also found at the Dojo Instructor Guide page on the wiki or in the bookmarks of the Dojo Instructors Slack channel. And that's it. That is all there is to it. We want you to get out there and share your knowledge with all of Brave. We want you to enjoy teaching. We want you to keep enjoying teaching in the long term. And we are always here to support you if you need us. Do not hesitate to reach out to us. I thank you all for watching, and I hope you have found this helpful.